Well, the result similar, the process a little different. The Calgary Flames lose again on home ice in what feels like now. Coming in, I don't know if it felt like a must-win game, but this feels like a crippling loss as they lose to the Leafs by a score of 2-1. Welcome to Afterburner. It's Boomer. In the home studio, there's Pinder in the in the nightclub. I like the lighting; it's good. Yeah.
When my right ginger gets down to here, par me another double.
Yeah.
The nightclub, man.
Just not meant to be, I guess. I didn't have a hard time. I didn't have no issue with their effort.
Yep.
But as the Flames were better than Boston the other night, Leafs were better than the Flames tonight.
Yep, for sure. And again, it's another guy. It's quite a list they're building. The Magnus Hellberg, the
I
Joseph
got it if you
Wall.
want it.
I mean, yeah, why not? Let's go there. Nobody seems to make goalies that have a tough time earning a paycheck in the NHL better than the Calgary Flames, who again surrender a victory to not a bad goalie, not someone that you should be embarrassed to lose, but again, they don't take advantage of an inexperienced third string netminder.
It's a third string guy, essentially, right?
Because Murray's hurt, Samsonov's their other guy.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, it was Shalgren that was their third. I mean, it's another guy that spent the bulk of the season in the American League they lose to, which is just a really disturbing trend this year that even if you get chances, they're not making any goalies have a tough time. And when they do, it's Ullmark with, the performance of his life.
Yeah. So Jackson Stauber.
Yep.
Mads Sogard.
Yep.
Is it Magnus Hellberg?
It is Magnus.
Samuel Ersson
for Philly.
I'm gonna throw in Laurent Brossoit. I'm just gonna throw him in. It's maybe a step,
nice.
But
it's been in the league forever.
Back up.
It was going to be the starter in Vegas before everyone got hurt. But not in the AHL.
Back up.
He was going to start when Leonard got hurt.
And then Wall. Joseph Wall.
We joked about 5 years ago about the Flames getting Christopher Gibson by the New York Islanders, and a pox and a curse has been placed upon the Flames house since then, or at least this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wouldn't you want to make life really difficult for a young netminder that hasn't played a lot in the NHL?
I think they tried. Honestly, I think they tried.
It wasn't a bad effort.
Hey, you know what? Leafs were not great in Edmonton 2 nights ago. They were good. They were good.
Yeah, they were better.
They deserved it, especially once they got that 2-1 lead. The third period was their period.
Yeah, for sure. Once they got the lead, it was trouble. And honestly, it's little things, but the Flames have a goal called back on an offside on the power play. That's a much more comfortable position to be in, just as the Leafs goal not being challenged and standing. That's a big one for them because they're up one. And, they put in 2 fresh D-men that did not play last night in Edmonton in the lineup. And newcomers Shen and Gustafsson, they played 7D. That was built for them to be up 1 in the third on the road with that crowd behind them. I've got a bone to pick with the coach tonight on a couple of fronts, Dino.
I know you do. I've got it in my notes. I knew you would. I was just going to say before we move on about the Leafs taking over. It's always, I say it all the time. I bring it up. It's never a good omen when you're the team trailing in the third and you get outshot. Shots were 10-5 for Toronto in
didn't generate much late.
They just grabbed a hold of it.
Yeah.
Credit to them. You know what? I thought Shen was good tonight. He was physical. You could tell he was excited to get back in. Rhett talks about it all the time. That first game, it's not hard to get up for. It's the second, third, fifth kind of a thing. Yeah. So
you can see what he is, right? That's why he's beloved, and that's why hockey guys love him. The data might not be wonderful, but he hits. He's hard-nosed. If anyone's going near the goal, he's grabbing them. Like, this is a blue-collar, stick-up for teammates, heart and soul, right? This is a Don Cherry special.
If you're a Flames fan and you're really frustrated because you feel like, and we've talked about it on the other show, we've talked about it on this show, if you feel like the separation is kind of almost razor-thin at times, you think back, wasn't it the Vegas game? Or was it I think it was the Vegas game. Didn't Anderson hit a crossbar or hit a post right before?
Anderson hit a crossbar in the game they lost in overtime before it went to overtime. That might have been Boston, or was it a game before that? Either way, we're starting to confuse all these 1-goal losses.
Hannafin off the pipe. Post. Even
Leafs had a pipe too.
2 nights ago, the shot goes off of the post by Lucic and lands on top of the goalie and doesn't go in.
Yeah.
Look,
You
I'm not
talking
saying
about
that they're
posts
unlocked.
after
It's
my
just,
heart. It just
well, I'm
feels like
saying,
they're cursed, right?
yeah. And I would think for Jacob Markstrom, he must feel like he's cursed because he gave them a chance to win tonight. He was actually very good,
Yeah, it was.
and
Biggest takeaway.
we're back to that. Didn't get the run support
No.
thing that was about 2 months ago. It just
Yeah.
felt like every time he went out, if it was 3-2, and then he was on the wrong end of it. 2-1, you know who scored one, because he wasn't.
Yeah.
He's not getting it right now. He is 1 win in his last 6 starts.
That feels high. The second goal for the Leafs, the one that stands as the winner, I never saw a great angle on the broadcast, and they kind of just let it be. You could see the Flames were looking at it on the bench. It wasn't reviewed. The 1 or 2 looks I got at it, it appeared to me that it was in Markstrom's glove and Järnkrok's stick pushed the glove into the net. What am I missing there? Because if it was that clear, the Flames clearly would have challenged.
It pops out.
Okay.
His glove is there. He pokes at it, and then it dribbles over, and it is right before the puck. There was that one angle from, I think it was right behind the net. Again, I don't know why Sportsnet, they can see it. They saw it. Every other from the side, and that was totally inconclusive. But that one, which is it was the ref's perspective, his vantage point at it. You could see it kind of either goes over top of the glove or in it and then out right before the net comes off. Good to see Calle Järnkrok can score in Calgary. You know, we've been waiting and waiting for.
He played deadline on and all the playoff games. The one goal he scored as a Calgary Flame was in that Game 5 loss to Edmonton. And his first game as a Flame, Dustin Tokarski, I think, went around the world pad stack with somebody's outdoor hockey gear, with a broken-ass stick from 1996. It was embarrassing that how good Tokarski was that night. He robbed Järnkrok game 1. Järnkrok never scores again until the last game of the year. And in a small sample against the Flames this year, 1 goal in the 2-game season series. I can't recall if he scored in Toronto, but I'm assuming not, or I would have.
I think it was injured. Yeah, I think it was injured.
There you go. So 1 for 1. It only took him 1 game, not 25 or whatever it was, to get his first as a member of the Calgary Flames. And so really quick, just before we leave that point, could you have challenged goalie interference if there's a poke at the glove, or was... And look, the Flames are pretty good on these reviews, as are most teams now. They've got Jamie Pringle in the sky. Cale McLean's communicating. He's talking to Daryl. I think if it's clear, teams are usually on it. Now that there's a penalty for challenging and being wrong, if teams they're dead sure. But I was just, because I thought it was in the glove, I was like, man, that seems silly that they didn't challenge it. But I also kind of was like, I must have missed something, because they don't miss these. So could you have challenged goalie interference or no?
You probably could have, but I'm wondering if the thought process is there. If you don't get it, it's 2-1, and now you're putting them on the power play. That could be game over.
Yeah, and honestly, at this point of the game, it kind of felt like 2-1 might have been getting close to game over.
Yeah, it
felt like that night where Toronto was coming on, Marner was starting to dance, and Wall was getting comfortable, and you could just see the new defenseman. There were some jitters early and a couple of missteps by McCabe in the first, but they were going to figure it out. And on this night, I don't know. It didn't feel like a lot of offense was going to be created. But then again, you mentioned the posts, the chances.
Can we go into the time machine? Was there a time where potentially, seriously, with all the upheaval that was going on in Toronto with the first round losses, could you have traded for Mitch Marner?
No,
we know that
I don't think
the
so.
contract was massive, but if you were willing to take that cap hit on, could you have gotten that guy? Because he was all world in this game.
If you polled Leafs Nation, you probably could have half the time. And if you asked people around the team about hot button topics, for sure. I just never think Kyle Dubas was there. He's always been ride or die with those 4 guys, and all 4 guys are still there. And they've had incredibly tough, painful, gut-wrenching, look yourself in the mirror, this team, do you or do you not have it type exits. And he's stuck with all 4 of them. I never thought that was going to happen with Dubas. And you saw it tonight, and you've seen it the last few times he's played the Flames have played the Leafs. Marner was the best player on the ice. Matthews still doesn't look quite right, but you could see how a couple shots is all he needs sometimes. He's a weapon, man. He's a special, special player.
Yeah.
Never thought anyone could get him.
And the thing of it is, kind of what he has to live with is that he will only be judged by what happens in the playoffs because of that whole scenario.
5-5.
Yeah.
Look at the big man.
Right there.
So before, because I know it's part of the thing, we always kind of salute a player coming up in a little bit. It's like that compliment sandwich. It's like, hey, you're doing great. This is no good. But how about I don't know what if it's only two? Because you're gonna rip some guys, and then we'll do the cheers. So
Well, I want to talk about the coach, and that's not going to be a cheers. That's going to be a pour it out. This is a wounded soldier from last night.
Yeah.
And then I do have a cheers. You've got a cheers. I think we'll probably be on the same page.
Yeah.
And then, we've got some other things to do as well. And I do want to hear from the coach as well. Got some splaining to do.
Yeah. Look at
They don't give you much, and so you got to bear down on limited opportunities you get against them.
You said you needed a goalie to get hot. Fair to say Jacob Markstrom at least turned the burner on to start?
Yeah, he was really good, I thought. I thought he was our best player. I mean, you got to make some big saves against those big guys, and he did that.
Did something in the way he was just carrying himself, even on a pretty routine save, feel or seem different?
No, he's a confident guy. It's not, he's got a strong leadership position on the team, and I think he tried to assert himself that way.
I think that overturned goal took the wind out of your guys.
I think for a couple of shifts it did, but I don't think it had any prolonged at all. I think it was pretty obvious from the bench that it was offside. I mean, the puck was a foot and we were about 3 feet, so I don't think it was really reviewable.
Did you get an explanation from the refs on the second goal from Toronto's side?
Said that the puck's in the net, right? Doesn't matter if it's in his glove or not. The only reason I was talking to refs about it was if they couldn't tell it was in and they thought it, and they still determined because it was on the ice it was a goal, then could I challenge because of the stick in the glove? But they determined it was a goal.
Just in terms of offense and trying to get that tying goal, what were you hoping to see out of your forwards that maybe they didn't do?
You need to somebody's got to make a big play, right? You're not going to get many chances against them, right? And I think we had opportunities when it was 1-1 to get the next goal, but the third there, they know how to. They're good at it.
There are live icings today. What do you think the reason for that was?
Pardon?
There are live icings today. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I think there was 2 or 3 that affected the game. Right? Caught lines out there, extra shifts, especially when they dress 11 guys, and you know that Matthews is out there a lot. Either Matthews or Tavares or O'Reilly a lot. So. Anytime there's icing, that's to the other team's advantage.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Bloody linesmen.
Icings.
Those bloody icings will get you. There's Daryl Sutter. And he's
one of
that
the
minutes.
reasons those icings can get you, is because guys can get stuck on the ice against people they shouldn't be playing against.
Is that going to lead you right into...
You can wrap up anything you saw
right
there. I'll give you some room. Any final thoughts on the Daryl presser?
No, we've heard it. Good to see FlamesNation in the chat group. Good to see it. It's got to be Big Dick Nick Alberg out in Ontario.
It's got to be for sure. I'm looking and you're like,
it's
oh,
late,
really?
Nick.
There's nothing better to do out there, eh?
Awfully late, buddy. Get some sleep. You got a show to do tomorrow. Rosie will be wound up.
What did they get? They got enough to eat for 2
it's some. There it is. Yeah, massive hammer. Yeah. It's something we've heard from Daryl after so many games. You need somebody to step up. You need someone to make a play. Someone's got to do something. And if the Kadri goal counts, then maybe it's a different game. But you had that entire third period.
Yeah.
The better part of it anyway, to make a play, to get a goal and even that thing up, and they couldn't do it. So you give credit to the Leafs as he did, because they deserved to win it. Yeah. It's just another backbreaker, and the math is just it's just getting worse, dude.
Well, and Rick alluded to it on the broadcast, and it's gonna get annoying because
Nick, did Nick? Oh, Rick. Sorry. I got Rick. Yeah, that's all I can think about is
big voice Rick, not Leafs Nation Nick. Rick had alluded to it on the broadcast that once they get through this tough part of the schedule, which has been, you look back, it was Vegas, then Colorado, then Boston, now Toronto, next Minnesota, then Dallas, Minnesota again on the second half of a back-to-back on the road. That's not easy travel between games. That's a really tough stretch. But then you're into your final 18 games of the year. 9 of those. So that's half of those 18 are all against bottom 6 teams. You close with 7 of 10 at home. You close with 6 of 7 teams not in the playoffs. It's not enough for me to believe, but if you are looking for something to cling to, it's that. I just don't know, though, when you can't take advantage of Woolen net, or you only get 1 goal and play fine against the Leafs, like, they're going to lose games to those bad teams. And because, well, I've learned from history, as all humans do, we're formed by what we've seen. What have I seen from this team all year, Dean? They're fucking a game over 500 against non-playoff teams.
And you know what?
They're way over 500 against playoff teams. Like, having a soft schedule is great if this team knew how to beat bad teams. They apparently have a tough time with it.
And it'd be one thing if you can't beat the bad teams, if you want to, bad teams. Now they're not beating the good teams. You lost to Vegas, you lost to Boston, you've lost to Toronto. So before you were beating the Rangers,
3, but that's not enough.
You were getting some wins, but if you're going to lose those, 1 of a possible 2, 3 of a possible 6, it's not enough. They're just
you said this
ground.
one feels particularly like haunting. What was the word you used? Like, this is a crucial loss or backbreaking.
This feels like it's a crippling loss.
Crippling, that's the one. Yeah, and I agree with you.
Nashville, who has been selling off like crazy the last week, they win tonight. Their points percentage puts them past Calgary.
Yeah, I don't like that. I'm not too worried about where Nashville's at, in the sense that they got a star player out 12 weeks. It was clearly an opportunity to sell high on Ekholm, turn over this core. They have Askarov in the wings. Maybe they shop Saros. Like, I get it. It was time for a new core. I don't know that the Flames are there yet, but yeah, it is clunky when teams that are selling are ahead of you in the standings. For sure it is. And it's not like Nashville's been robbed by having the second best goaltender 3 out of 4 nights this season, if not 5 out of 6. That's what the Flames have been. It just wasn't tonight. They finally got the goaltending. Sure as shit, they couldn't get more than 1.
So let's move on. You were going to talk about the coach.
For the first half of the game, it seemingly every time I saw Milan Lucic's line with Walker Duehr and Trevor Lewis on the ice, so was Austin Matthews' line. You're at home. This is last change. I understand rolling lines. I understand Darryl doesn't like matching, but there are little things you can do to help give you a better chance of winning. And I understand there's a value of rolling lines, but this is a big game. This is the game before the trade deadline. You talked about that stretch. If they win tonight, you can say they got 1 point against Boston, outplayed them. They got 1 point against Vegas. They got 2 against Toronto. You pulled out 4 points in 3 games against contenders. You could make that case. You lose it, and you lose it, frankly, because you've got your worst line out against the Leafs' best line. Marner walks Lucic at the line. He looks up, and I don't know if he can see the puck. There's so much drool coming out of his mouth. He's salivating. He knows he can walk Luch. It's flat-footed Luch at the top of the line. And not only was it like, oh, there it is. It's like it was all night. And I shouldn't say it was all night. It was the first half of the game. Finally, at the midpoint, they get other lines out against them. But it's like, do they have to score to make the point? Darryl's too smart to get caught with the 4th line out against the guy that scored fucking 60 goals last year for the first half of a huge game. It's insane.
Yeah. And as the game went on, obviously they tried to steer away from that, but it was rough because the goal, as you said, the 4th line is on. And then again, I think, were they not on when Marner walks through again?
Yes.
Markstrom has to do the diving glove save. Yeah, there was at least 2 or 3 occasions where the 4th line was out and you were just,
you're at
should
home.
not have been out there.
Your centers are Lindholm, Kadri, and Backlund. You pick 3 of 4 centers. Austin Matthews doesn't have to play a single shift against Milan Lucic's line tonight. Yeah. You got last change and you got 3 guys. You're never going to have to double shift anyone. You're never really going to have to break up that much rhythm. He's just so dedicated to rolling 4. And I get it. Walker Duehr has been good and there's a time and a place. But Christ, put people in a place to succeed. It's just batty. And yes, they figured it out. But it was not until Marner was flying. And oh, there you go. Look who's got the lead. Mm-hmm. Midway through the game, they finally get away from that. It's frustrating. And then you're down 1. You know you're going to need some chances. You've got offensive zone time with over 3 minutes left. He doesn't pull his goalie. He waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and waits. And then they get hemmed in a bit because you know what? Without an extra guy, they didn't keep the zone as easily. And then with 40 seconds left, you get your extra skater on. Go look at the modern coaches that, do some homework on this stuff and when they pull. It ain't with 40 seconds left. It's closer to 3. They had their chance. They didn't do it a couple times. A lot of time left. And that's not like the game. And Lucic's line getting caught out against Matthews isn't the game. It just feels like your coach left some on the table tonight, didn't he?
I'll be honest. I didn't focus so much on the goalie pull.
Well, and it's a Hail Mary. Like your chances of scoring are probably 1 in 5 or whatever. Like I get it. It's not the game, but it's just another thing where like, that's not the smart play. That's the dumb play.
Yeah, but it
like,
was.
What are you protecting? You're protecting. You don't want them to win by 2. You need to tie the game.
It was watching the fourth line, and I thought obviously you saw Marner put the move on Denny Gilbert, the 5'6",
another
the
guy doesn't have
5'6"
to be out
guys had a tough night too. So your depth guys, and you scored 1 goal and you scored it shorthanded. Are we picking on Dennis Gilbert? I guess so, but
no, it's the coach, man. He doesn't have to see a single shift against Marner. You got 3 pairs and you got last change. I'm sorry. You got a great top 4.
Not ideal. So now's where we spin it and do the, now it's the nice guy routine we pull. It's just what we do now. Cheers of the game.
It's just, you really want to attack the people with the most security, and Sutter's got a 3-year extension in his pocket, so I thought I'd take a run at him. That's probably best for the business, right? Yeah. So now we'll do something different.
Yeah, we'll do our cheers.
You went leaving? We want to say something nice about?
No. Presented by BK Bowfort Liquor, located on the Trans-Canada Highway, right across from Winsport beside McDonald's. Stop in, stock up on your way to the mountains, or wherever you're going. If you're in that area of the city, that is your place.
Go
on Twitter, at BK Liquor. On Instagram, at BK Bowfort Liquor. Cheers of the game, Flames player of the game. For me, it's pretty easy. Jacob Markstrom. He did it. I feel like he did enough for his team to win the game. 32 saves. He had. I made a note of, which is not to say Flames had chances, but man, there was Matthews, that early cut to the net in the first period. Glove save off of Jake McCabe.
Breakaway on Nylander.
Marner post and then makes a save off of Austin Matthews. The Nylander breakaway, the Riley breakaway right before the Yarncroke puck goes in. That diving glove save on Marner. That's 5, 6, 7, 8 grade A, high quality chances, and he made saves. Really gave his team a chance to win, and it felt like if you could again. It's why it feels like this is such a rough loss, is you got the performance out of the guy that's been struggling that you needed. And maybe Daryl's right. Maybe it doesn't matter. He can start the next game and be unfazed by it, but it feels like the guy could use a win by now. He's played poorly and deserved losses. He's deserved a little bit better here the last bit.
He's no dummy. I don't think Markstrom's thinking, oh man, I need to make one more save. I think he's saying, I played well. We lose as a team. That's a resurgent bounce back game. I don't think you have to tell Jacob Markstrom that. He knows that. Now, he wants wins. He didn't get one. You can speak as such at the media, but that's an encouraging sign. It's just tough that this is game 62 that he's, and is it a one-off? Is it 2 weeks? Like they're in a spot now where they're going to have to, playing well is one thing. Getting on a fucking heater is what they need. That's it. That's their only chance. Get on a heater. And you got a chance with Markstrom. It's just ironic. The first time you've got good net money from him in seemingly a month, you only score once. He was good. Cheers. And Mandeep texted me. He was at the game. He was make sure we give Markstrom some love. I said, dude, we're on it. Don't you worry about it. Yeah. Clean sweep of the BK Bowfort. Cheers of the game.
So you're on Markstrom also?
Yes, of course.
Cheers of the game? Yeah. So BK Bowfort Liquor, you see the details there on the screen. If you don't, we'll tell you about them. They're right in the west end of the city, as we mentioned, across from Winsport, and right by the Denny's. Moon's over my hammy. If you're going out there, grab a 6-pack.
Are you giving free love to Denny's? Let's see the smoke, Denny's, before you start moons over your hammy on this post game.
Well, we're mentioning McDonald's.
Wolverine's pissed. He's shaking his head right now.
We're mentioning McDonald's. That fucking clown isn't giving us any dough. Fuck him.
The guy with the white skin and red hair. Yeah, I'll stay away.
That's right, prick.
Unless they're paying.
Although
hey, I love
Mandeep though,
Mandeep's a beauty.
Great guy. Yeah.
He doesn't have white skin, red hair.
BK,
he's a normal human. What the hell are you looking at me? It's clowns.
BK
good shoes.
Just BK Bowfort Liquor. on Twitter at BK Liquor, on Instagram at BK Bowfort Liquor. You probably deserve a punch in the face.
I thought you were gonna say shot. I'd say, well, what has Mandeep got in the back in the cabinet for us? I'll take a shot after that one. Oy, oy. I was gonna think
now I'll ask you this because I did go and I looked. So the Kraken, they win in overtime.
Craig,
as we're sitting here, it's the Wild are leading Vancouver 2-1, and as I mentioned, Nashville wins in Florida. There's 20 games left. How close are you? Like, where are you at in terms of your?
This was a significant blow.
Hopeful, yeah.
I thought there was a lot of positive to take out of that Boston game, and they were fine tonight, but it wasn't nearly the same. Not that you can do that every night. I'm not saying 57 shots only allowed, teens in regulation, but there wasn't the zone time, the pressure, the chances, the stout defensive play. They were leakier. They didn't do as well creating opportunities. They didn't test the goalie nearly as much, like a fraction. And I just think we were waiting for this team to give a signal to the GM. They have. They've been measured against playoff teams a bunch in the last 2 weeks, and they've had middling to poor results. And we said, okay, well, what if they're in the same spot? What if they're like a point or two out of it? And it's like, okay, well, you're right. You probably will be there. It won't be a clear buy or a clear sell signal. They've given the sell signal. And it's an unusual spot for the roster in the sense that there's not, I don't think, any pending free agents that are going to get you anything of value. I don't think anyone's knocking the door down like, when's Michael Stone healthy? We need him. Or like, hey, those guys that have been rotating in the press box? Could we get our paws on one? And even Milan, like you watch him tonight, like it's a very, very niche, small role that, frankly, I don't know that a lot of contenders have room for on their roster. Never mind the assets, never mind the 5.25 cap space. I don't see any natural sales pieces that are going to bring you anything. And so now you start looking at the expiring contracts next year's, and we've talked about it for a month. There's 6 significant core players that are up next year, maybe 5, depending on how you view Zadorov. Lovely pinch early on, big man. 3 up front. So Lindholm, your number 1 center. Backlund, your shutdown defensive number 3 center this year. Career Flame, drafted by the club by Darryl, played for Darryl. Now, that's how long he's been around. And then Toffoli, who Darryl has talked about as his only natural finisher in terms of just an elite finisher, a great shooter, beats you from distance. They don't have any of those. On the other side, on the back end, you've got Hannafin, who is just 25 minutes a night, plays against everyone. He's a absolutely lock it in 2-3 in this league. Tanev, who's an excellent defensive guy that has really helped good young players in their career at junctures. Everyone who plays with numbers get better. And Zadorov is a big physical guy that, is the roller coaster. How do you approach guys that expire in a year if you don't even know that this GM is going to be here next year? That's the challenge I see. I think it's easy to yell sell. What's hard to do, especially when emotions are high, is to say, we feel like we want to throw players in the garbage because performance hasn't worked. But if you're going to change guys in and out, or you're going to have a plan moving forward, the plan should be the guy that's going to have to run the team. The plan shouldn't be inherited by the new GM. And likewise, if you're on your way out, who is really going to run the sale? Is a guy on the way out going to do it? I'm okay if they extend Treliving. I think he's done a lot of good things. There's clearly been blemishes. It's a very NHL GM resume. It's not like he's overmatched. He wins a lot of trades. He loses a lot of trades. There's a mistake in free agency here. There's a couple great hits late in drafts. Like I think he's a competent, strong NHL GM. Bring him back, great. But if you don't know who's running this team next year, it's just a little complicated for me to have a different human and their vision run a sale.
Now, I agree with most, if not all of that. However, there's no way they're even contemplating selling, right?
I think when we hear what people like Elliot and Frank have talked about, I think they are not going to host a fire sale, but they might look at one guy.
They're not selling. I mean, you know what they're doing? Look how close we are. We're in 1-goal games. We have leads in the third. We're that close. How do we help this team get a little bit better?
Yeah.
I guarantee what can we do to make this team better? I don't think
so. Let's talk about that.
Any thoughts of selling, like you say, that's off season.
Well, and I think that the good news for the Flames, and at least the pitch I'm making, is that I don't think any of these players' value plummets between now and draft week. And at that place, you're going to have someone who's running the team in place. I would think that would be what a functional organization does. And like, I don't think all of a sudden people are like, we don't want Tyler Toffoli now. It's 2 months later and he scored. No, he's still Tyler Toffoli. Everyone knows who Chris Tanev is at this point of his career. Injury is the only thing that can derail that. And he's bounced back brilliantly coming off an offseason of injury last year. Backlund is what he is. He's been incredibly durable. He's a great defensive centerman. I think a lot of teams would love him. I'm not worried about them. Oh no, we let this asset poof into nothing and go away. And we're both on the same page. A lot of this work gets done in the offseason. But could one guy get pried off you? Because I just think it's harder to believe you can get in after tonight.
The only thing about, and I agree with all of that, but don't underestimate the desperation of GMs at this time of year. There are some GMs that maybe they feel comfortable in their seat. Maybe there's some other guys that are like, I cannot miss or lose in round one again.
Look across
Tyler
the rink
Toffoli,
tonight, right?
Tyler Toffoli right now is playing some of the best hockey of his career. You didn't see it tonight, but he's scoring goals. He's been a leader on this team on a year that has been no good. And if you eat some dough, you may get more for him now. And like we talked on the other show, there's no guarantee that next year his offensive numbers are as good or that he's healthy or whatever. Right now, he's healthy, he looks good, and blah, blah, blah. That said, I can't see an offer that comes across the table tomorrow that has the Flames say, okay, we'll trade Tyler or any of those guys. I really think they sit there again and think if we would have had one more shot, one more goal, one more power play chance, maybe we win this hockey game.
Yeah, and they might have, but I think the difference being, like, there's not enough runway for the moral victory. We're playing well. We only lost by one. There's only so many games, and each loss is that much more crippling to your chances because you've fallen further behind the pack. Like, let's say Minnesota picks up points. Seattle already did. Edmonton's found some stride here. McDavid's scoring 2 a night. Like, it's just harder to envision this team getting in now. Then if they get 2 points tonight, you're like, well, now the gap's only 3 to Winnipeg. Right? You could start to think, but it's like, no, now it's 5 and we just gave a game in hand to Winnipeg. So I'm with you. I think that if you have to describe the posture of the Flames at the deadline, it's stand pat. But if one team wants to offer too much, it's like, look, internally, we think we got a 1 in 3 chance. This is a bigger haul than we'll be able to get at any other juncture. We're selling high on this stock, or just be Zadorov and get the hell out of here. Although I don't know who wants him.
Well, and
it's been tough the last couple months.
Unless there's some real come to Jesus conversations tonight at the Dome, and they sit around a bucket of beer and say, "Look, let's be honest. Let's look each other in the eyes and be honest with each other, and this is what we want to do." It's just even in the years where they've sold, it took. You just know Treliving when he sold Glenn Cross and Chris Russell, they were well out, and it was just obvious what they had to do. They were expiring contracts and all of that, and even then, you could tell it was, man, we don't do this.
Yeah,
I still wonder if there's a trade made tomorrow, is it a player coming in to help, or is it somebody leaving? I think I know where I put my money.
Well, where would you? You saying they bring someone in?
Well, you want to buy sell?
Let's do it. All right.
All right.
We do buy it or sell it for Derrick Newman of Newman Dean's Real Estate Group with CIR Realty. Derrick's great pal of the show. If you're in the market to buy or sell, give him a call. You see the email address on the screen, dnewman@cirrealty.ca, and the phone number is 403-619-6661. Dean, buy it or sell it. After tonight, with the gap between the Flames and the postseason expanding, not shrinking, they should sell tomorrow at the deadline. Buy it or sell the sell.
Now, are you saying they should or they will?
They should.
I am buying. I think they should. Depending on the offers. You're not. No, but I mean, if somebody says we'll give you a second for Toffoli, get rid. No, if there's a real good offer, then yeah, you sell. Because like you say, there's no real. If they don't trade Trevor Lewis as a pending UFA, that's not squandering an asset. You know what I mean? That's not Johnny Gaudreau going for nothing. But yeah, they probably should.
No, I did say what should they do? What will they do is what you talked about earlier. So
yeah, what will they do? I don't think they'll get rid of anybody. I think that they'll ride or die with this group, and I think even going into next season, there's going to be some changes, obviously, but because of the cap and everything else, I think you almost have to bring all these guys back and say that was a blip, guys. Right? You're better than this. Let's run this thing back.
Well, we know the goalies. We know the goalie's better than this. We saw it tonight. That's been missing this year.
Again, you know what? You almost wish that some of those guys were UFAs this year.
Yeah,
you almost do,
right?
Yeah, it would force your hand a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's 6 in 1 year, none in this year. That's a lot of work that has to get done in the offseason. Because let's not just say, okay, well, bring them all back. You have the opportunity to talk extension with Elias Lindholm this summer. You're going to get a really good idea of whether he wants to, sign up and play theoretically the rest of his career the next 8 years in Calgary. Elias, you signing up for some more Daryl Sutter for the near term? Elias, do you want to get out of here? Elias, do you feel like this group's close? You're going to know. And so when everyone's saying, oh, don't run it back, that's crazy, you got to sell now. This summer will be very, very, it will give this organization clarity on what they have, because they're not going to walk Elias Lindholm straight to free agency. They're going to get ahead of it and say, here's where we see your value. Here's what, you tell us what you think your value is. And can we make the numbers work? But before we get there, do you want to be here beyond this coming season? You don't walk into the season without having a really good idea of what it takes to sign Elias Lindholm and what your probability is to sign Elias Lindholm. And it's not just him. It's Backlund. It's Toffoli. It's certainly a Minute Muncher and Hanifin. Tanev's a little bit different conversation. He's longer in the tooth, and I don't know that it's like, well, here's the max deal. I mean, he's well into his mid-30s now. And Zadorov is less desirable than the others. But these conversations this summer will give you clarity. They're not going to roll with 6 UFAs next year out of the gate. It would be preposterous to put yourself under that kind of duress as a GM. So you're saying, and I think it's probably Lindholm out of that whole group, because I think Backlund being a little bit older, he's been here his whole career. I kind of feel like he wants to be here. I think that's kind of a separate deal. So Elias Lindholm, if July 1 hits, let's talk extension. And if he says, you know what, I'm not ready. You get to training camp. He comes to camp. He's got a contract. Game 1, it's opening day. You don't have an extension signed for Elias Lindholm. You're trading him? Well, I think you need to know this summer what the probability is. I think you could go into camp without a deal done, but I think it would be really silly to we'll talk in we'll talk in the new year about this. No. Do you want to be here?
So what if the Lindholm camp says we just want to play out the year? We want to see how things go.
Then you start taking offers. Like, your job as the GM is to have all these.
That's what I'm asking.
Full. So you're saying, okay, what can we get for him on the market? And maybe you can talk in vague terms with an agent ahead of the draft. But my concern, and I stated this a couple months ago with Daryl, and I think he has softened up with the group since. I think Daryl was a factor in Matthew not wanting to be here long term. Not the biggest and not the factor, but it was a part of it. The thought of you can't play every game like it's game 7 was sort of relayed and back channeled to me through some sources. And I get that. He asks for a lot 82 times a year. And that doesn't mean guys are soft, but Rhett talks about it all the time. It's not fun coming to the rink all the time with Daryl. He wears on you. It's a challenge coexisting with him. I've heard from very good authority that a lot of guys that have played for Daryl before and played for Daryl now, and guys that play for him twice, don't like him. They respect him, but if you have your choice, which you do when you're a year away from free agency in today's NHL, would you be surprised at all if Elias Lindholm said, I love this group, I love this city, I can't sign up long-term for 3 more years of Daryl? I wouldn't be surprised one bit. And if you get that kind of feedback, you best be calling around. Who needs a center? Who's a contender? Who are their best prospects? How many picks do they have? That is what a GM does all summer.
So what if you get that from the bulk of those UFAs?
Then it's clear what your work is. You can't let them walk for nothing. Your job is to retool. Or, I guess I should back that up. If my assumption is that the coach is Teflon, it feels like the coach's connection to the owner is closer to the GM's connection than the owner at certain junctures. I don't think Brad Treliving was the driving force behind Darryl's extension. I think Derrick and the owner were. And it's handcuffed them, I think, because the GM knows even if he does get renewed here, the things I'm talking about are likely to happen with at least one or two of those 6 players, if not more. And so if that's the case, can you change the coach if you're the GM? Like if you're Treliving, could you fire the coach if you wanted to this summer? I don't think so. If you're a new GM applying for the job, like if it's the Steve Yzerman interview, is he being granted autonomy to get rid of Sutter if that's what his internal audit determines is a big issue with this group, or allows you to re-sign a theoretical core part or star player? I think Sutter is a big problem if they have to get rid of it. And then the other side, Rhett will say, like, he's not the guy for a young team. It's unfortunate, but the shelf life of a coach is short, and it feels like Darryl's worn out a lot of his.
It's kind of why I feel like the whole group, because of that, you see everybody back. I just don't imagine. They almost have.
You don't see them trading like a Lindholm if they know he's not going to resign?
No. Well, again, the theory is you should, but when have they done that?
They sell pending free agents all the time.
The Flames?
Yes. I mean, it was clear.
When?
What?
They always
when
they go into the year.
Playoffs, I get it.
But they go into the year to see what they've got. And if they bring this group back, you know they're going to think that they've got a chance to make the playoffs. And if they get into the season and they're hovering around a playoff spot, they are not trading guys. They never do.
So you think a GM in the NHL, one of these 30 jobs, wouldn't try to move Lindholm before the season?
That's not the question. That's
but
not
that
the question. I'm saying the Flames. Yes. If I'm a GM, I'm not putting myself in that spot. The Calgary Flames, under the current ownership, with Daryl Sutter behind the bench, will never do that. They will bring those guys back to get into an 82-game season and give it their best and see how. Somebody else, Jason's, they never sold Iggy. Like they didn't sell good. They don't sell guys.
They did, but I mean, they sold at the wrong time. And look, I get it when it gets to Iggy, it's bigger than just asset management. It's the face of a franchise. It's all your marketing. It's the same thing with Gio. They fucked it up. We all saw you're going to lose him for nothing. Why don't you get something that's more than nothing? And they didn't. And I don't know if that was the organization or Brad Treliving or honoring Gio's wishes. But I think you're being a little too cynical. I mean, if what I'm hearing from you is accurate, you're basically saying that no matter who has the position of GM, Darryl's actually running the show next year.
I don't think that I don't think there's a GM that's going to come in here and say, I'm tearing this thing down to the studs because.
Yeah, no, and I don't. That's not what I'm suggesting. Moving one guy doesn't mean it has to be picks, right? You can go you can bring in.
It's their number one center. It's their number one center,
and he has kind of looked like a number 2 center this year. To be fair, not
again. There's two things. There's the thought process and the theory and the whole strategy behind it, which I agree with. Then there's what we see here in this town with this team and this ownership. They just don't do it. Especially if you had a younger coach, maybe it's different. So with that coach, no chance.
I've got one example that I think is interesting, and maybe it's not the perfect comp, but Curtis Glencross did not get along with Bob Hartley. It's not a secret. It's not talking out of school. Curtis will tell you, if you ask Bob, he might acknowledge the same thing publicly. It was clear that was not a marriage that was going to work. They were in a playoff spot. They were a team that was on their way, certainly not like ironclad postseason, but they were a good team that year. They sold him at the time, and I don't know, it's not exactly apples to apples, and I'm not saying Curtis Glencross is as important as Elias Lindholm, but that was a situation where a player didn't like a coach. They saw the writing on the wall, and it was time for them to get some assets.
No, I would need to go back a little bit. I think you'd need to go back and see where they were in the standings.
They made the playoffs.
I know they weren't way out of it. But I think this would be this is a third line winger.
Yeah, no, that's
with an expiring contract, not Elias Lindholm.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine unless there's a deal that really makes sense in some way. But again, it's Darryl. He's not here to try and bring Jacob Pelche and Matthew Coronado and even Dylan Dubé and Andrew Mangiapane. It's not about them.
Yeah.
It's about Darryl. It's about veterans. Let's get Goodbranson and Big D. Let's get Luke Shen. Like that's the thought process. And I just don't see how that changes this offseason.
Yeah.
Because most everybody's coming back.
I think the question will be, does the owner acknowledge that Darryl hockey flopped pretty hard this year? Is the owner still okay with the concept of Darryl running the team? Because the owner's not dumb.
Did it?
And Darryl was an awful GM here. Darryl's a very good coach.
Or did the goaltending flop on them this year?
Well,
if their goaltending is just a little bit better, they probably have 15 more points. They're probably middle of the pack.
I'm with you, and I've been saying that all year. So I'll backtrack. To say it flops isn't fair, but to suggest that Darryl is some savant that is like, where would we be without him? I think that luster's worn off a bunch. I think if you gave grades out, you're not handing out A's for the work Darryl did this year. There's the misstep with Pelche in the media. There's the immediate critiquing and, not respectful behavior in his comments around Jonathan Huberdeau. There's the stubbornness with Milan Lucic on the second line. There's the refusal to play young players much at all until essentially your hands forced. I feel like the owner's too smart to not see those things too. And so while traditionally I agree with what you're saying, I wonder about absolute power for Darryl more than I would have heading into this season.
Again, you're talking to me. I know how I feel about it. I just think if you're at the Dome and you walk in, if you're the owner, you walk in, hey, Darryl, come into my office. Hey, what do you think if we take a step back the next year or two? We're going to trade Elias. We're going to maybe move on Tanev. What's the answer going to be?
I would think he probably says,
get another coach.
What are we getting back? Oh, that'd be great. If he says that, perfect.
Get
Save
another
some money,
coach.
Get someone modern. I don't think he said that. I mean, I think he would voice his displeasure. But, the owner's too smart to say give Darryl player personnel. He watched this team coming out of the lockout when Darryl ran it. They were awful in the draft. They were way too old. They give too much money in term to old guys.
But again, remember, you go back and we kind of, a year ago, gave kudos to management, to Conroy, Treliving, and them for building Darryl a team. Don't bring in guys that don't fit a Sutter system. Bring in guys that are Darryl guys.
Don't let him GM is different, though, right? And at times you need to take away his toys, like put Rooney in the minors or bring up a kid that he doesn't want to play, but now he's like looking at him in practice every day. I think...
I know you want this. I know you really want this. And you're trying to convince me something that you don't need to convince me about. But I think if you take it away and let's put some truth serum into you, it's like... The owner is who the owner is.
No, I know, but
Darryl doesn't.
You don't think the owner's confidence has waned in Darryl?
Dude, how long's the owner been here? Like he's not new. You've been here long enough. Have you seen what this team has done? Curtis Glencross and Chris Russell. Those are the only guys they've sold off. When have they ever done that?
No. So what I'm saying is,
we got to move on. We're doing laps. I know you want to convince me on this.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying I believe the owner's confidence isn't where it was on Darryl, and I think the confidence as a coach is one thing. The GM has got to be a different category. Anyway, it's not a good spot. We'll agree on that. What you're talking about has a lot of validity and truth, and I'm scared shitless of it because I think there's a lot of that exists.
Because I think if you want to. You look back to the Gaudreau thing. You weren't going to trade Johnny going into his last year.
Almost re-signed him though.
Right? You weren't going to do it. You weren't going to do it. Should you have done it? I guess so, but you weren't going to do it. And I just don't see, unless it's a similar, you're getting another center because that's how he got here in the first place. It was kind of a hockey trade. He was disgruntled in Carolina and couldn't get the deal he wanted or whatever, so he said, I'm not signing. They traded him. Unless it's something like that where that's quality NHL ready / top 6, top 4, if it makes sense that way, then maybe it happens. But who's making that deal for an expiring contract unless they can sign him, which is what Treliving did? I don't know. I just feel like
They're not rolling 6 guys.
It feels naive to think that they're going to look and say, "Hey, do you want to be here?" And that anyone's going to give them a straight answer at that point. And then they say, "Okay, then we're trading you."
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, but that's immediately what you do.
Of course,
you
it
gauge
is
the market. Yeah, I think like on Lindholm, I think it's clearly the most important of those 6 guys. We know where Backlund is in his career, and ditto for Chris Tanev. And Toffoli, I think, he hasn't been a career Flame, and it feels like a great sell high opportunity. If you're bad next year, you sell him at the deadline if he's not signed, or whatever. Sell him this offseason if you get a good deal.
What if they're in a playoff spot?
Swap him for someone with term. Yeah. And look, maybe if they know that they've got Matthew Coronado in the bag, you're comfy doing that.
So were we buying or selling? Was I selling?
Buy the sell or sell the sell? I'm buying the sell. I think tonight's loss is a clear message. This isn't this group. It might be good enough on paper, and it's told you through 62 games it's not good enough on the ice. So if you can find some poor sucker that wants Nikita Zadorov, do what you need to do.
Poor Zadorov. Brought to you by Derrick Newman of Newman Dean's Real Estate Group with CIR Realty. If you're buying, you're selling, whatever you're doing, let Derrick do the work for you. Email Derrick D. Newman, hello Newman, at cirrealty.ca or call 403-619-6661. Derrick Newman with CIR Realty, Newman Dean's. Final score, Calgary falls 2-1 in regulation to Toronto, and it is hard. It's a final now. The Wild have beaten the Vancouver Canucks. So the Kraken, the Predators, and the Wild all pick up 2 points tonight.
So they stay 5 back of Winnipeg, if I'm correct, and Winnipeg gets another game in hand.
They're Edmonton tomorrow, I believe,
back
is
to
how
back.
that works.
Oilers could be the Flames' friends the next 2, but it just still feels like there's a lot of Hail Marys that need to happen here in the last 6 weeks.
You had to win. You had to win those games. You had to win those games against the...
You're up 3-1 against Vegas?
Man. I mean, it just goes without saying, but... And you knew it at the time. You're going to get to the end of the season. You're going to get to near the end. I mean, there's 20 games left, but you're going to get to the end of the season, look back, and, well, you could have had that, and you should have had that, and you could have needed that. But truly, it's a broken record, but the goaltending, although it was not a factor tonight.
Wasn't tonight. This is what happens when you got no runway. It's like this would have been a moral victory in a lot of ways, or at least move on to the next one. You just can't when you're this far back.
So Minnesota Saturday at the Dome, and then they've got them again in 3 nights later.
They go to Dallas on Monday, and then Minnesota Tuesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday? No, Monday and Tuesday.
It's back to back. Yeah,
2 games and 4 nights against the Wild. So it's at home at Minnesota, travel day, Dallas, Minnesota.
If you got any hope left, we'll see you in a week.
It's got some points.
But tomorrow's the deadline, whatever. But a week today, those 3 games, that'll be 6 points. 4 of them, proverbial 4-pointers, Ryan, against the
ones, I'm told.
Against the Wild. What have the Wild been doing? They've been playing any better here?
Yes, they have. They're on a
7-1
rough skid, and I
2.
feel like they've put a nice 2 weeks together, week and a half together.
Yeah,
the Wild.
They
had a rough road swing, I want to say 3-4 weeks ago. It was a tough patch for them. They added Johansson. Gustafson's looking good in net. They pick up Nyquist. I'm not exactly sure what's going on health-wise there, what they're expecting. But
is Nashville going to finish ahead of the Flames here?
Are they done selling? Are they done selling? I mean, if Nashville's smart, they won't. You call up Piskarov and let him play a ton. Like, figure it out. David Poile's no dummy. Finishing 9th isn't going to help you. Drafting 9th will.
That's the other thing. Even for the Flames, if you're going to start to spin and look at the inverse standings, there's only so far they're going to go.
Yeah.
without a major collapse, and I don't see them having a major collapse.
It would be lovely to get a look at some of the kids, but this coach don't work that way. Right?
There's no.
Hey, here's
wider-
a chance to get Matthew.
Yeah.
No, fuck Matthew Phillips.
No,
He's
no,
5'6".
no chance. Yeah. So that's the story from the Dome. It does feel like a huge one. And you go back, you even think the one against Colorado that felt like a kick in the shins. The Boston one you felt
2-on-2.
good about because
They
you
played
played
really
well
well,
against
but 2-on-2 in
team-
that one again.
and they did it tonight, right? Because they thumped Buffalo and fastest team to 100 points.
61 games. Sway dog tonight. Don't matter who.
There's some guys sitting in Boston. Their job is to do post-game shows after Bruins games.
I'll tell you what, those are fucking boring. It's probably
A bunch
easier to
of
do them,
losers.
but they're boring. Remember when this
no.
team was like 5-1 before they lost to Edmonton? 5-2.
It's always Rhett's thing. And Rhett was
team's
bitching
boring.
already. Oh, what are we going to talk about? This team's so boring.
Well, and
Win
to,
all-
like,
whoa.
it's very inside baseball, but like when things are going well, it's like, yeah, good job. Well, here's who they play next. When shit's hitting the fan, you got to solve problems, Dino. And people will say, do this, don't do that, fire this guy, go put him on the Mars mission, get him out of here.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen when you're winning.
Neelio94 in the chat. This room is the most depressing place on YouTube right now. In all of YouTube, I gotta think there's got to be some awfully sad
There's
shit
some
on YouTube.
darker holes than that,
Right?
Come
Like, is
on.
there not some like death videos or some death marches or funerals or something? This cannot be. YouTube's a big place. So like you're talking about the world. This is the saddest place in the whole world right now.
There's some shame
Come on,
spirals.
underscore Neelio94.
Maybe it could be the most depressing Flames post game show.
No, I was here for I think both Detroits.
Oh no, I don't mean
Those
ours.
were-
I just mean amongst the other people talking about the Flames on this night. It's probably
Oh,
not
I
a huge
see.
list. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know.
That's not a lot of them.
You know who fucked us tonight? Smooth transition, right?
Yeah, real good. Yeah.
The goddamn video coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs who saw the Flames were 3 feet offside and
Only
called
3
back
feet.
the Nazem Kadri goal set up by Rasmus Anderson.
Yeah.
We had a little action on our Betway bets of the day earlier today. I had the Anderson power play point paying plus 240. Guess who passed it over to Kadri? Rasmus Anderson. Who did you have as part of a little multi-combo bet? Nazem Kadri
Yeah.
to score against his old team, and it was a laser. Looked good.
Yeah, it did look good. It was a hell of a shot. It was a hell of a shot. Yeah, I had Matthews and Kadri both to get goals tonight.
And I needed an empty net. They needed that one to count. You challenge goalie interference on the other one, get that overturned, and then Huberdeau was going to set up an empty netter. He loves the empty net apples. Let's go.
But you know the thing about Betway and doing these things?
Hmm.
Got another chance tomorrow.
We do, and we've been
Tomorrow's
going
another
good.
day.
All right, we
I
hit
haven't
the. I
seen
hit the 2-point Nichushkin the other day. You hit something a couple days ago
Yeah,
too.
buddy. I banged both.
Marner?
I had Marner,
Yeah.
the Marner power play point in
Oh, baby.
Edmonton. I had a power play point. You got the regulation, but I was looking for some value. Looking for some
All right.
big game hunting.
And Rhett, man, you want to talk about bad beats? Oh, there has been some
Yeah.
crazy things happening in sport. And you're like, I was this close. He had Buffalo money line victory over the Bruins at like plus 225. They only
And-
lost by 6 tonight.
Yeah, and Boston out on the road trip, first game back. Buffalo's really chomping at the bit, really want to get at them. Hey, look out. The Sabres in that playoff hunt in the East, 7-1 Bruins.
Oh, first game back.
You know,
Second best
The
goalie
Sabres.
playing.
the mighty
Hey.
Sabres,
Hey.
7-1. Yeah. It's the
Oh,
Betway.
man.
That's our Betway
That's
bets.
our Betway bets.
Yeah. Tomorrow's another day. You know what the great news is?
Why
next
do
game
I
is-
hear sarcasm in your
No,
voice? when you say great?
what? The next game Saturday against the Wild, no afterburner.
That is great. Also, they'll have Kevin Hayes in the lineup, who they'll add in trade tomorrow deadline, right?
The Wild or
What's
the
a
Flames?
first? No, the Flames. Oh, get rid of these first. We're winning now. Daryl says it's a window to win. Unfinished business.
Yeah, they'll be taking on Noah Hannafin, Tyler Toffoli, and the Dallas Stars on Monday. and then Kevin Hayes and the Minnesota Wild on Tuesday. Is there what you expecting anything tomorrow? Who's even left? We talked about it today. JVR. Gross.
I mean, it's gross at what price? Like if it's a fourth, I love it. If it's a second, bar.
Such a dog. He's a dog.
That dog can score more goals than a lot of Flames can. I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, they're not in a position to add. Wait till Daryl saps the life out of him.
Fucking flaming horse
head.
Fangs
in you.
It's like he's forgotten how to score.
What's happened to Huberto?
I'm going from Torts to Sutter. What is that? Is that an upgrade? How are you? I don't know how that is.
Oof, I don't know what you
Where
call
does
that.
Torts end? Yeah.
I think Torts
that's going to do it
raw around the boys.
Yeah, maybe. That's going to do it for tonight. Tough loss for the Calgary Flames. Our record takes another. Hey, we went an hour tonight. That's too long.
New record? What'd you do with Kerr? 4 hours?
I don't remember.
Were you passed out in the chair for a while?
Yeah,
Drooling?
No, it was about an hour. It was an hour-ish, hour something.
People are still hanging strong. We got people watching. Thank you for doing that. Hey, we're pretty lucky to have people, that put up with our nonsense and happen to, mildly or even more than mildly enjoy what we do. So shout out to everyone that's hanging out here at whatever fucking time it is after another shitty 1-goal loss.
It's too much us. We do the thing in the morning and then we're doing this. It's just too much. It's too much us.
We need to wheel some bench players through this spot here. Then you can do every third one. How's that sound? It's a new non-Kerr record. That's from the text. Thanks.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Well, again, you can't. If we all stack ourselves and measure ourselves up against Kerr, you're gonna feel.
Well, it's like taking stats from the dead puck era and comparing that to the 80s and comparing that to when you couldn't make a forward pass. You gotta compare against comparables. It's apples to apples. It's a non-Kerr record.
So 32 saves for Jacob Markstrom, a goal shorthanded by Blake Coleman, up to 14 on the year. It's been a decent year for Blake Coleman.
That line, man, I'm telling you, they've been the Flames' best, most consistent line since they were put together Jan 7-ish. Mangiapane, Coleman, Backlund.
Yeah, but former Flame, forever a Flame, Calle Yarncroke, his goal, 2:20 into the third, is the deciding goal as the Flames fall 2-1.
There's a few former Flames over there, Brody and Gio.
1-3-2 in their last 6 games. So
I know
that's not a heater, right?
That's when a fucking cooler.
They need to go on a heater.
You go put your 6-packs on that 6-game run. They'll cool them right off. Okay.
Yeah.
You stay away from the fucking casino. Ruin people's lives if you're that cold.
Thank you, Derrick Newman and Newman Dean's Real Estate Group. Thank you, Mandeep and BK Bowfort Liquor, proud sponsors of Afterburner. That will do it. We'll be back next week. See you tomorrow, buddies.
Yeah, I can't wait. Trade deadline. Whoa.
Can't wait.